My name's Paul Jason and I'm the motorcycle broker, and I'm excited to share with you the road test that we did on this wonderful, unique motorcycle built by Alan Millyard. It started life as a 1973 750cc 3-cylinder 2-stroke Kawasaki known as the Widowmaker. By the time Alan had finished with it, it had grown another cylinder, making it a 4-cylinder 1000cc 2-stroke. The motorcycles that Alan Millyard builds are now iconic. He is a living legend. He takes standard road motorcycles and builds the type of machines that he thinks the factories should have made. And he tries to make them look as much as possible like a factory prototype, which I think you'll agree he achieves here. What's unique about Alan? He doesn't use CAD, he doesn't draw anything, he doesn't use designers. He sees it in 3D in his mind and he goes to work. So you must imagine this massive workshop with wonderful tools everywhere. Not at all. His garage is the size of a family car. In there he has a lathe, a milling machine, a pillar drill, and these were all bought from a school years ago. He uses hand files, a hand hacksaw, and his barbecue. That is the list of most of the tools that he uses when he builds these wonderful creations that he makes in his own garage. Now, I may have made Alan Millyard sound like a Heath Robinson mad professor. He isn't at all. He is a fantastic engineer. He just believes in doing things by hand and doing them beautifully, which is what he does and he's best at. Now, let's have a look at this motorcycle. A 1973 Kawasaki H2 750 2-stroke. Starting at the front here, the front brakes, we were very fortunate with Kawasaki because they were generous in giving you 2 really decent, powerful front discs. However, they weren't so generous on the front forks because they're quite spindly and they tend to flex a lot. What Alan did with this motorcycle is he bought an original H2 which needed serious restoration, and he went about doing a really beautiful restoration of an H2 that I'd be proud to sell as it is. The clocks, they're all genuine. The coded date stamps on all the components throughout the bikes, they're all exactly right for the month and year of production of this particular motorcycle. Switch gears all perfect, master cylinders exact, the bars are right, the indicators are correct, everything is absolutely correct. There's not lots of replica parts all over the bikes. Most of them are genuine Kawasaki. So it's a really high standard of restoration. And likewise, he never went and powder coated the frame or did anything daft like that. He used wet paint for the frame. Speaking of paint, his painter has won awards at Pebble Beach on the concourse competitions, and you can see why. This colour is very difficult to recreate. It's been matched perfectly to the original Kawasaki colour, along with all the graphics on the tank. But what is beautiful is that he has not over-restored it. It's not overly shiny. It's been done beautifully with just the right amount of shine, so it looks more or less like it left the factory. The coded date stamps on the wheel rims are correct, as I said, like the other coded parts, but also, rather than buy replica spokes, Alan replated the original spokes. So these are original spokes in the wheel. Everything else is as it left the factory. These Kawasaki's, the frame flexed, as I said. They were very, very weak frames, and the swing arm is incredibly long on it. And Kawasaki even put a brace in to try and beef it up, but it's still like warm chewing gum and not overly effective when it comes to corners. So to start with, the H2 didn't handle, and it was not very corner friendly at all. Now, coming to the engine, Alan cut one engine in the crankcases at halfway through cylinder 1. He kept what was left, which was 2.5 cylinders. He then cut another engine in the crankcases vertically at cylinder 1.5. So you put 2.5 and 1.5 together, you get 4 cylinders. And the beauty of his engineering is he managed to get both the middle cylinder exhaust pipes through the gap in the frame without having to modify the frame. What's really interesting as well was that he cut these crankcases by hand with a hacksaw. But it's beautiful. You cannot see where the motor's been joined, and it's been done absolutely perfectly, just like the other 52 motorcycles that he's built by hand. This motor is now greater than the sum of its parts. It went with that extra cylinder from 74 brake horsepower to 121 at the back wheel. To give you an idea, Kenny Roberts' World Championship winning TZ750 only produced 120 brake horsepower. But those racing two-strokes did produce their power very differently to these large capacity road bikes. The TZ750 and all the racers had a really aggressive step when you hit the power. So the power would come in at 8,500 revs, and you get all 120 brake horsepower between 8,500 revs and 10,500 revs, and they would get nothing below that whatsoever. But these large capacity two-strokes, Suzuki also built one, the GT750, and these KH7, these H2s, these KH750s, they produce their power through torque, because they didn't want road bikes that would have a mad, insane stepped power band, and the way they did that was through port timing, lower compression, and through carburation. Alan did his best to keep the whole motor standard, apart from the extra cylinder, with the exception as well of these beautifully crafted expansion pipes that he built with his name stamped on them. Put that all together, you get 121 brake horsepower at the back wheel. So what's it like to ride? It's awesome. It pulls cleanly with vast amounts of torque from tick over, and as it hits 2,500 revs, it starts to wrench your arms out of their sockets, and it goes all the way up steadily, more and more aggressively, up to the 7,500 rev per minute red line. But there is no stepped power band. It's not discernible. It does go like a scalded cat from about 5,000 revs, but it just is more and more intense as you open the throttle. It does leave the rider with a bit of a problem in the motorcycle, being a standard H2, just doesn't handle. And you think you're going much slower than you really are. You think you're doing 50 mile an hour, you're actually doing 80 mile an hour, because it's all so effortless to this motorcycle. That's a bit of a problem when you start to enter a corner and you're going 30 mile an hour faster than you thought. So you have to think ahead. It requires vast amounts of input from the rider, just like an MV750 Sport from the 1970s. You've got to think ahead, but be very present in the moment and very aware of how fast you're going. Alan said top speed is around 150 miles an hour. And he's done this in the desert in the United States. And I have no reason to doubt that whatsoever, having ridden this motorcycle quite extensively. In top gear, as you try to stop the plugs from fouling and you bring it up through the power band at about 5,500 revs, you'll find in third gear you're doing 80 miles an hour. This has got another 2 gears after that. The sound of this motorcycle is a cacophonic symphony of complete and utter pandemonium. It's just like being on Facebook in the 1970s with people like Court Ballington, Randy Mamola, all lined up against Barry Sheen with Kenny Roberts. It just takes you back to the GP grids of that era, and of course, the smell of the two-stroke as well. What Alan Millyard has built here is the motorcycle that Kawasaki should have built in the early 1970s. It pulls cleanly from tick over. It's super fast, like a modern day sports bike fast, but it's a two-stroke, which doesn't seem to make any sense in today's world, but it does. If you've got a good long open road, or you're going on a long journey where you can get it on the throttle stop, this is a great deal of fun. But they need to be straight roads, so America's a very good place to ride it. Drag strips are great places to ride it. If not, you need to be engaged with the motorcycle in the moment and thinking ahead and aware of your speed. If you do all of that, it's a great deal of fun. It's a mega motorcycle, and it would have changed motorcycling history. Had Kawasaki added that extra cylinder, we wouldn't be riding 4 strokes today, we would be riding 2 strokes, because 2 strokes were king at that time. But the big 2 strokes, the large capacity 2 strokes, just didn't cut the mustard, and people went for 4 strokes instead. This would have changed history. So Alan Millyard builds the motorcycles that the manufacturers really should have built. So is it a good investment? This is a magnificent investment. It's a bespoke, hand-built, unique motorcycle. No 2 motorcycles of Alan's are the same. Each one's different. He's made 52 motorcycles. Several of them have been bought by the Barber Motorcycle Museum in America. So his machines are iconic. He's built a Dodge Viper V10 motorcycle. He's built a V12 Kawasaki Z1300 2.3 litre. He's built a V8 Kawasaki Z900. He's built a straight 6 Kawasaki Z900. He's built a 5 litre motorcycle using a Pratt & Whitney aircraft motor. The man is a genius, and he's a living legend and a living icon. His machines are so beautifully crafted, and they're impossible to find. We were very privileged to be able to buy this motorcycle for a client of ours, because when Alan very rarely does sell a motorcycle, he'll do it through us. If you can find one, this is a great investment. Nobody else is going to have one, and it's a joy to own and to ride. So that's the 1973 Alan Millyard Kawasaki H2 1000, the motorcycle that Kawasaki should have built. My name's Paul Jason, and I'm the Motorcycle Broker.